Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to the Face and the Card Making Space and another STAMPtember exclusive collaboration video. For those unaware, Simon Says Stamp throughout the month of September throws the biggest stamping party of the year, STAMPtember. They've partnered with a bunch of crafty brands to release limited edition exclusive sets that are one and done. When they sell out, they're not restocked. However, each of the brands has a ton of products, today's being no exception. Today, the collaboration is with Pinkfresh Studio, and they have a lot of amazing products. I'll link to the Pinkfresh brand in the description box below the video, along with everything else I use. That will also be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It is what helps pay the bills and keeps the channel going. And let's get right into making these cards. So this Pinkfresh Studio collaboration set is called Edged Floral. Like I said in the intro though, Pinkfresh has a massive product line. They have stamps and dies and press plates and hot foil plates and washi and inks and storage solutions and tools. So many things. So many things. And just if this style appeals to you, I definitely recommend checking them out because yeah, there's so much to choose from. And I started by taking some just Canson XL watercolor paper. And I am inking up the main image from this set with clear embossing ink. And I had used my anti-static powder on the watercolor paper. And then I stamped the image a couple times because there's a lot of detail on here. And then I coated it with Simon's silver embossing powder, which I don't use very often. I've talked about this in past videos. I just don't reach for silver very often. I usually will go with gold or anything but silver. However, it has its place and it's still pretty. So that's what I used this time. And I did it twice because I had the two panels sitting here and I thought, why not? Plus it's fun because I'm going to use shimmer powders and it's always fun to get completely different results with the exact same powders. So after I'd stamped the images and coated it with the embossing powder, I used my heat tool to melt everything. And right now these panels are larger than A2 size. They're about 4.5 by 6 inches because with my watercolor paper, I just cut it in half and cut it in half again. And they're 9 by 12 sheets of watercolor paper, which is nice because then I can tape these down because I'm going to use shimmer powders and I'm going to be spraying a lot of water. I will have a link at the end, in the end screen of this video to my playlist using shimmer powders. I have dozens upon dozens of videos I've done over the years using these powders, other brands like the Tonic Nouveau, etc. And yeah, when spraying really anything with a ton of water, the paper is going to curl. It's immediately going to curl up, which isn't the end of the world, but when you've added, pigment powders of any sort, things like that, once the paper starts to curl, everything runs off the edges, hence me taping it down. So I used just my Altenew Satin tape to tape these down. And then I'm using colors from two different Lindy's Magicals sets. I'm using the Under the Sea #2 set for most of the colors. And then I pulled one of the colors from the Under the Sea 1 set, and I'll have a link to those. And these ones have the little shaker tops on them. And the thing to remember with any of these like shimmer powders, a little bit goes a long way. Like I'm barely tapping the container and it doesn't really look like much. In real life, you can like see the powders because some of these powders look almost clear in a sense or like just no color at all. The magic is when you add the water. But you can see the amount of powder sitting in real life. And now you're going to see it when I start adding all of this water. So after I'd sprinkled on the powders, I start misting it and I hold my bottle way high up at first, just so I'm getting like a light mist so that it, because if you spray it with water, like close up, it's just going to blow a lot of that powder right off the watercolor paper. So I start high up, work my way down, add a ton of water, and it looks like an absolute hot garbage mess, but you got to let it dry. And then it looks completely different. So It takes a good long while because, again, I spray it just heavily with water. And the biggest thing too is to just leave it. It's tempting to play with it. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I can't help it and I'll get in there with a brush or, just kind of muck around with it. But yeah. And the funny thing is even with these and the colors I used, I wasn't expecting kind of like a rainbow. I really wasn't. And that's just how it turned out. And I was like, this is great. I love it. Can't go wrong with a rainbow. So let everything dry, obviously, and made sure it was completely dry before removing the tape. And then I used one of Simon's basic rectangle wafer dies to die cut these panels. So now they're slightly smaller than A2 size. And then I set those aside, and I'm using one of the sentiments from the set, and I'm going to heat emboss this onto just a piece of black cardstock. So same thing, I use my anti-static powder tool, and I'm going to ink up and stamp the sentiment with clear embossing ink. And then I'm just going to shift the cardstock up and do it a second time. I'm going to use that same silver embossing powder. So pour that over, tap off the excess. I'm going to melt this with my heat tool. And then I'm going to use my microfiber cloth to remove that excess anti-static powder. I didn't do that on the watercolor panels because it doesn't matter. But on darker cardstock, you can see all that anti-static powder. So remove that with my microfiber cloth. And then I cut out those sentiments. And then as one of my additional embellishments, one of my favorite most used die sets is the little etched Dragonfly wafer die that I've used a ton. And I die cut the wings from some Tonic pearled silver vellum, which they call it pearled silver. It's not silver, really. It's just slightly shimmery and pretty. So I die cut the wings from that, and then the body from some Concord 9th, I think it was juniper cardstock. I just had a scrap in my stash. So adhered the little wings to the little dragonfly body with just little tiny dabs of craft tacky glue. It doesn't need much. So got those adhered into place. And then my card bases are top folding A2 white note cards. And I'm going to stamp that big edged floral on the inside of the card. And I'm going to use a lighter shade of ink. So I'm going to use Concord 9th Sea Glass ink. And it's still a fairly intense color, but I would just write over this with like a black pen. No phase. Like, doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, it ended up stamping a little darker than I intended. And I was like, I'm fine with it. So once I'd stamped that on the insides of the cards, I'm going to stamp another sentiment from that set with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And then I'd put foam tape on the back of my panels and then pop that onto each of the card bases. And then for the sentiments, I trimmed down some thin little black foam squares and just trimmed a few into just narrow little strips just to fit across the back of this. Because I fussy cut these sentiments. If I had coordinating wafer dies, I just would have die cut scraps of cardstock and stuck them together. But during STAMPtember, I generally do not get any of the coordinating wafer dies, so I just fussy cut all the things, and I'm fine with it. So, foam squares worked perfectly. Stuck them to the back of it, peeled off the backing, and then I'm going to adhere these to my card bases. And then I'll adhere my little dragonflies, again, with just craft tacky glue. And I only put adhesive like right behind kind of the main part of the body. So the tail pops up a teeny bit. And then, of course, the wings pop up a bit too. It just creates a little bit of extra dimension without creating any bulk. And then my final little bit of embellishment are these gumdrop sequins. So pulled some of those out and then sprinkled those kind of around these cards, and then I'm going to just adhere them into place with little dabs of the craft tacky glue. Let the glue dry, and that's going to finish off these cards. So I will use my flashlight to kind of try and show the shimmer. It's hard sometimes, and it will vary depending on what set of shimmer powder you're using, how much water you've used, etc. But yeah, they're sparkly and shimmery, and then I've got my little dragonfly, and I love the sentiments. I really like the style. Pinkfresh has a really nice, very like classic style. So yeah, and these ended up super colorful, which I was really happy with. So like I said, I'll have a link to my playlist with shimmer powders at the end screen of the video, and then below the video, if you just expand the description box, I'll have the links to all of the things along with my social media, etc., etc. All of that will be directly below for anyone interested. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me today, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I would love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in supporting me over on Patreon, the link to that is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye.